Welcome to the conversation. My name is Shannon Taylor. I'm the executive director, and we're here with our special guest for tonight, Renay from the Franklin Williams Commission. Comes to us directly as the surprise attraction from our friend Bill Etheridge. I went into Bill Etheridge's office, and he said, I have someone that you have to preempt all programming for, and you heard her a few weeks ago, and now we're back with a continuation of an interview on some other subjects. And as I mentioned the last time, Renay practices in New York State privately, and she has an extensive trial experience, something I would recommend anybody to enjoy. She's an adjunct professor. She was an assistant DA and a law clerk. The law clerk part is my favorite part of the entire background. Renay, I want to start off asking you, first of all, are you optimistic in this coming year with the new administration in Washington?
Oh, Shannon, first of all, thank you for having me on, but I am extremely optimistic about the current administration. And I think that most people are. What happens is, as a practicing attorney in New York State, before I became an attorney, I was fortunate enough to go to Boston University School of Law. And after graduating from there, I went to the Bronx District Attorney's Office to learn how to litigate, to learn how to try cases. And so I did that for about 6 years. And after being in the Bronx District Attorney's Office and having some successes there, I had an opportunity to work for a law firm called Bower & Gardner, a huge medical malpractice, general liability firm here in New York. And what I learned there was something very different. I learned that the cases were different. They were a lot more complex. And so because I was a litigator, I had to recognize that now this was a different aspect of the law. This is very different from criminal. So the juries were different. The lawyers were different. But I had successes there as well. And then after Bower & Gardner broke up, I decided to take what I learned and open up my own doors. And I've been in private practice since that time. But now coming into private practice, and this, Shannon, addresses your question about am I optimistic. What happens when you go into private practice, you recognize, at least I recognize, that there were some things that I had to learn. I had to learn all over again, but I was optimistic. So what happens is I decided that what I was going to do was to take my criminal background experience and my civil litigation experience, because Bower & Gardner was a top medical malpractice general liability firm. So I was going to combine those two and start my own practice, which I did. But what I recognized is that I had to learn the mechanics of the court system in civil practice, and I had to recognize that the juries were different and that people were different. So whereas at Bower & Gardner and the district attorney's office there was a support staff that allowed the paper to move, in your own practice you are now responsible for the movement of that paper. So in a district attorney's office or Bower & Gardner, litigation is the end result. In private practice, it's very different. You have to get to the end result. And so in starting a practice where I did not have the support staff, I had to hire staff. And now what you recognize is that you're going to have bumps in the road when it comes to staff. You're going to have some good ones and some not so good ones. And this is what I also learned. And so as I'm starting a practice and I'm in a practice, what I learn is that law is a people business. It's not just the fact that you have to deal with clients, but you've got a staff to deal with. You've got other attorneys to deal with. You've got, in criminal cases, whether it's legal aid or the district attorney's office, you've got judges. You've got different kinds of people that you have to deal with and that you have to learn to deal with. So, and that's what I was able to do. And I maintained that optimism and maintained the practice with its bumps in the road, etc. And I was able to create a practice that I still have today. And so what I recognize is that being in private practice is something that I really enjoy. But I also recognize, probably more importantly, probably more than anything else, is that being in private practice, at least for me, is a lifestyle. Whereas some lawyers, some practices, that is, they may work from 9 to 5. But what I learned is that the lifestyle in terms of being a practicing lawyer is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week business. Because what happens is that you can be in a community, you can be out in the street, you can be out socially, and bump into somebody who finds out or learns that you're a lawyer, and what happens is people stop you and they say, "Can I ask you a question?" And so when a person says, "Can I ask you a question?" you stop, you turn, and you talk with them. And so what you learn in private practice is that everybody, absolutely everybody, is a potential client. You could be in the supermarket. Folks in the community may know that you're an attorney. At least where I practice, I don't live too far from where I practice. And so I'm in the community all the time. And people stop you and they want to ask you questions. And you give them a card and you invite them upstairs so you can sit down and just hear the fullness of the issue. And so because the lifestyle is such that you are a lawyer all the time, what happens is that you're dealing with people all the time. There was a time when being an African-American attorney was something, particularly in terms of being in the courts, was something that was not too favorable, and that not everybody chose to go out and actively hire an African-American attorney. But I think now, in light of a lot of things, and the current administration with Barack Obama being the president, being one of them, I think that people now are looking for something else. And what they're looking for is quality. And I think what happens is that people are no longer looking for the color of a person's skin or their culture. Nowadays, people look up and they Google you. So what happens is when they Google you, all they're looking for is, can this lawyer produce a quality work product? And so what happens is that as a result, I have clients as far away as Sri Lanka. And all they did was contact somebody and get some information about a work product, and they retained me. And so we live in a time now where even when I deal with other attorneys on the other side, and I'm a plaintiff's counsel, I represent clients who are accident cases, any type of personal injury cases, because I maintain a general practice. It's criminal, it's civil, it's real estate. And what happens is sometimes on the other side, I may run into an attorney who is African American. And that African American is fighting just as hard for his client as I'm fighting for mine. So no longer is it a situation where you have, you can't be a practicing attorney and have prejudices and biases. You can't stay in business with that. Because what you have to recognize is that everybody is different. So if the thought process that just because I'm up against an African American attorney on the other side that I'm going to win some favor or get some kudos, that's not the case. Like I said, that attorney, African American attorney, is fighting just as hard for his client as I'm fighting for mine. And because we live in such a very diverse community, we live in a diverse city, what we're recognizing is that we're living in a diverse world. So because you can no longer, you can't have these prejudices, you can't have these biases, they just don't work anymore. Any time you see a situation where the world is changing, and the world is changing, and the fact that Barack Obama is the president of America is something to be applauded, but it's an indication that the world is changing, and that the world is perhaps even becoming optimistic. And once you recognize that the world is changing, that you may want to change with the world. So when you're practicing law and you come across all kinds of people, you want to be open-minded. I could not stay in business and have a prejudice or bias against anybody because I would not eat. What I like to do is I like to provide a service. So what happens is that in a country that is changing, in a world that is changing, what you recognize is that the law changes and that people's attitudes about law changes. Anytime that you can turn on the Oscars and you can watch a guy stand up and accept an Oscar and give a political speech, you know the world is changing. Anytime a movie like Slumdog Millionaire, a movie made in India, can win an Oscar, 8 Academy Awards, you know the world is changing. So in order for an attorney to stay in business, in order for someone to say, I want to produce a work product that is of quality, you have to be able to embrace people, and you have to be able to embrace other cultures. And so what you find is that in a world that we live in, that it is, at this time, it is probably the best time to be optimistic. And it's probably the best time to be optimistic because you're seeing a lot of different signs. I mean, people have spoken and were elated and are still feeling that elation with respect to Barack Obama being the president. And they're doing it with this sense of there's a freshness and there's a newness. And one could argue that even when we see him on television and when he speaks, that he comes with these new and fresh eyes. That is actually welcoming. And so if you're an attorney and you're going to stay in private practice and you're going to maintain a practice where people look forward to coming back to you, that they don't mind referring their friends to you, then you do want to be able to understand that this is a vast world, and people are different, and cultures are different, and it's important that we recognize that and embrace that.
I'm glad that I didn't ask, are you pessimistic? I obviously asked the right question for you. I imagine you're referring to the acceptance speech by the best actor for the Harvey Milk movie. Right. And I don't particularly care for him, as he said himself. He makes himself easily to dislike, but I agreed right on with what he had to say there. And I also have always, as you know, in our organization of not just blacks and Jews in conversation, but not just includes for gay and lesbian rights, we've always fought for that. And I personally, speaking personally, I also await the day when gays and lesbians achieve full and complete equality, because that's when, I think that's the last barrier. And if they can hold out against gays and lesbians, they can hold out against all of us. And I thank you for coming back on again. I noticed in your biography as a professor that you have brought students to tour the courts, and that you have mentored students, and you've brought in guest speakers, which is what our organization has always done, and advanced educational professional careers, and even gone to Rikers Island. We brought a band on to Rikers Island, and I brought comics on and musicians, and then invited the weekend out inmates to perform and do comedy and music as well, and they outdid us. So there's always plenty of opportunity for talent, and I look forward to having you joining us once more. Thank you.
Thank you.